Alabama has now essentially outlawed being trans up to the age of 19. One would imagine that eventually they'll do it. Maybe for older, even like just outlaw trans people. We know that in denying youth things like hormones and puberty blockers will increase suicides and depression. We know that from this study that we just read. Can you imagine, like, what would your agenda be? What kind of ally are you if you are mad at, or you express, or you, I don't know, publicly shame a transgender person for being angry on Twitter about these things? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I give you ally of trans people, Jimmy Dore.
There's another one. Look, I'm sorry, but I would love to see more comedians who say shit like this get slapped.
All right, pause.
Might teach them humility.
We've got to just preface this. Dave Chappelle was attacked on stage a few days ago, and it was pretty scary. I'm glad he's okay. The person had a gun that had a knife in it, something like that, and they were arrested. Dave made a series of jokes afterwards, including Chris Rock was there, and he said, "Oh, I thought that was Will Smith," which is pretty funny. But Dave also said, "I thought that was a trans man."
Right.
So, but that was one of his many jokes.
We should just be clear, it was not.
It was not.
Person.
No, and according to Chappelle, right? Didn't Chappelle speak about it the next night and said it was some type of like stunt that he had almost like talked to the guy? The guy clearly has some emotional issues,
right?
But it was something that Chappelle had been talking to him about beforehand.
Without getting too into the weeds of it, he apparently was able to speak with the guy. Like security allowed him to go speak to the guy, and the guy clearly seemed to have some mental illness problems and was saying he was doing it as like a publicity stunt to raise awareness for his grandmother being displaced by gentrification in Brooklyn. So it was just clearly like not
his
anything.
His arm was out of his socket.
It
was.
Right. And I just want to say, like, I don't like focus on jokes as like, I don't think it's politics, but I think it is really despicable for Chappelle to make a joke that was a trans person
100%.
right after that. Like,
Absolutely.
it's really tasteless.
Well, it's tasteless, and it's also like, can you find in our society right now a cohort of people who are more vulnerable and more the subject of public derision and also more susceptible to being stigmatized in society right now than trans people? I mean, honestly,
he literally can't give it up. He's fixated on it, and I don't understand it. But this is a part of a segment Jimmy's doing on Chappelle.
Look, I'm sorry, but I would love to see more comedians who say shit like this get slapped. Might teach them humility and manners.
Well, that guy really
and then also just like laughing face. Crying tears of laughter after that too. So just to give you a sense of the tone of this.
And that person has under 1,000 followers.
Yeah, it's just a random Twitter reply.
Let's remember, this is Jimmy Dore.
Yeah.
Who derided anybody who was talking about like, words of violence and blah, blah, blah. But we've got more to say about what
he's also talking to Kurt Metzger.
Respect for the movie G.I. Jane, huh?
That's at Simi Transy. Simi demands rights, they, them. So that's another trans person who is calling for violence.
What does he care about Chris Rock? Like, do they just want to get Chappelle so much that the Chris Rock thing has nothing to do with anything trans?
No.
And all these people jumped on it like, get Chappelle. Like,
well, it seems like they're violent. It seems like there's a swath of the vocal trans community. It seems like the most vocal ones. I mean, I don't know many trans people except the ones who are vocal. So I don't know. I'm not in a position.
Quite a few, and none of them were like this.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, I've heard you talk about that. Quite a few trans people,
Can you pause
in New York, dude? You're gonna be.
What's so amazing about this segment is that the guy that attacked Chappelle was not trans. So in order to make this narrative work, they've got to find somebody on Twitter with less than 1,000 followers who says that you should slap Dave Chappelle and then make it about how trans people are violent.
He did not. She did not. They did not say they did not say, the Twitter handle, they did not say you should slap. They said, I would like to see more comedians slap. Because I want to be very specific about this.
Crying face emoji.
That Jimmy Dore is now creating this narrative that, at least from his perspective on Twitter, there's a swath of trans people who are violent, calling for violence by saying, I would like to see another comedian slapped. Laugh, emoticon, because we're going to use that standard in a moment to assess other things. But continue.
In New York, up all night around town, you're gonna have a lot of interaction with trans people. I've never met someone who acted like that ever in real life. On Twitter, you would get the impression it's like really common, you know? So I don't know, like Twitter sucks. It really does. Like,
so does this show.
So it's just crazy that, I mean, and again, I think I would be considered an ally for the LGBTQIA community, not the A's, the LGBTQIs. I stop at the A's, and it's asexual.
Oh, pick a team. That's the one.
I know that's the one. That's the one I make jokes about. But I can advocate for their 100% civil rights and no discrimination in any way, in employment, in housing, in anything. So that used to be called an ally. So I don't know what they'll call me now, but that's what I think.
You know,
how about calling you a fucking grifter for clicks and willing to subject that person to harassment and to create a narrative that transgender people are violent because they said, I'd like to see him slapped so that he learns some manners or something.
I think black people should have all full rights. I just think they have several pathologies that is stopping them from becoming a regular member of society.
Well, you're not saying they all have pathologies. Just the ones you've come across.
A lot of vocal
Just the ones you've come across on Twitter seem to have pathologies.
The ones that are advocating for their rights, they're a little more violent, right? We want the more pleasant, polite trans people to represent. Like, they're being a little too aggressive with asking for their rights.
They're so worried about the violence that they're promoting.
Jimmy is against violence, right? That's why he would never promote, say the Boogaloo Boys on his show.
Well, let's look at other times where we brought up like the idea of like saying I would like to see someone slapped.
That's beyond the pale, right?
Oh, here's a video.
Or even invoking it, yeah.
Here's an interesting video.
Huh.
Emma Vigeland says this. She goes, "There's no." I know. When you grow up rich in a cul-de-sac, you find pretty words to shit on people who are actually fighting for things.
Pause it.
When you grow up,
pause it for 1 second. Apparently, also, when you live in a $1.9 million house with multiple BMWs, this is just coming from a guy who used to be on a show, so I don't know. I have not been to Jimmy's house. Apparently, you also. You also have some interesting things that you fight for.
Hey, it was not a cul-de-sac, guys. It was a regular street.
It was a regular street, yeah.
Regular street.
Jimmy's father was a business owner and a cop, so just to put that out there.
Super rich in a cul-de-sac and your parents are corporate lawyers, shit libs, and you've had every advantage handed to you your whole fucking life. When did she ever fight for anything? Never. Again, people who are sitting at home on their fucking millionaire asses, never doing fucking anything. Anything.
Somebody just told on himself.
Anna Kasparian sitting in her $24 million studio wagging her finger at other people who are actually out there pressuring politicians. She says there's no understanding of how goals are achieved historically because these folks are being misled by Red Brown Alliance media figures, sapping them of energy and cash. Progress. So what she's doing is undermining activists in the middle of a big.
She's undermining you, and there's no activists out there sapping people of energy and cash. Just you idiot.
I wish I hadn't used Red Brown Alliance there. I was meaning it more sarcastically, but keep going. Yeah.
Different cities for Medicare for all. Hey, why don't you ask to speak?
Hey, why don't you go call the Chicago teachers fear-mongered by Fauci about COVID? You fucking clown. I mean,
we got to get
to that part. Yeah.
at that and go out and give your opinion. Why don't you go out there and interview some of those people and tell them about the red-brown alliance that you're so worried about that you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. And by the way, these are the kind of people like to quote Marx as if they're smart because they went to good colleges that got paid for by their corporate lawyer parents. But if they ever got within 5 feet of a worker, they'd get punched in the fucking face.
Whoa, calling for violence.
I'm a villain never.
Whoa, are you suggesting that workers should be punching?
Yeah.
Listen, here's the thing. I consider myself an ally of drunk comedians, of people with drinking problems, and who go on their YouTube show and make millions of dollars. And I will say this to anybody watching. I promise you, Jimmy makes multiple times what anybody on the show does, including myself. I consider myself an ally to those people, but every time I see them, they're calling for violence. And I'm so, that's. And he didn't even do it with a smiley face emoticon laughing.
No, he did it with red face angry emoji.
I don't know what it is. Like I believe that people with drug and alcohol problems who go on and espouse, who do shows based upon specific tweets, they should be not denied housing. They should not be discriminated against. They should have full rights. It's just on a day where maybe, hypothetically, some state outlawed the existence of people who have a drinking and drug problem doing a show, I decide to talk about how violent they are. Because that's just my experience in watching them.
Luckily, there's all those videos of me getting punched in the face at all those rallies I went to, right? All that evidence.
I forgot the little bit that I also think is revealing, just for me personally, where he says, read Marx all the time. Well, maybe if Jimmy read Marx, he would be, he'd understand why maybe like Peter Thiel on the Supreme Court would be a bad idea, or why you don't want a Lava Jato t-shirt, or why the Teamsters aren't cucks for not supporting the trucker convoy, or why Chicago teachers should actually like continue to fight for their safety during the pandemic. But he's busy. He's too busy being, I guess, bitter at people who went to college.
And let me say this too. I generally don't think that people who find that their YouTube numbers are waning because the anti-vax movement is starting to calm down because of it's not being, vaccinations are not being required in the way that they were. Generally, I don't find I am supportive of those people who find that their anti-vax numbers are going down, so they have to go on and move on to sort of like trans bigotry, soft trans bigotry.
Or
I think those people deserve all the rights in the world. I want to make that clear. They should not be discriminated against in housing. They should not be discriminated against at the job force. They should be able to buy as many BMWs as they want. Should be able to buy as much, housing as they want. Probably underpay all the people who work on the show, and that's why they know none of them will talk to him anymore, because they saw him making bucket loads of money and not sharing it with people who built the show. Look, I don't believe those people should be discriminated against. It's just like the ones I see, I sort of feel like they're all like that. Violent. It's weird.
Jimmy
Really
Dore
weird.
is a Peter Thiel Republican.
Yeah, it is, just to button this up, it is interesting too how, like, unoriginal it is. He's just trying to get some of that Joe Rogan audience that's going to come to him, right? I think Metzger is a frequent Joe Rogan guest too. Rogan can't shut up about trans people, spends maybe seeming like an inordinate amount of time on his show backing up Chappelle's anti-trans jokes, and so this is the new frontier.
Chappelle and
once
Rogan
COVID's more in the rearview mirror.
Chappelle and Rogan got COVID at the same show. Remember, they went to the event together.
Brothers in arms.
There is a reactionary ideology that isn't Republican, and Joe Rogan exemplifies it. But a lot of people partake, including Dave Chappelle, and that's why he's fixated on this to the point where it's making his specials impossible to watch for me anyway.
And here's the thing too, I don't know much about Metzger. I mean, I know that there was some controversy there. My sense is he's probably not that bad of a guy. I don't know. I really don't know. And he clearly there was saying, like, my experience with trans people is not like this. But he should know. When he is on that and he doesn't push back and say something like, you know what? This whole segment seems to be a complete bullshit. This whole segment seems to be total bullshit. Because anybody who is not inclined to discriminate, stigmatize, abuse, disregard trans people can see right through what this is, which is you pretending like you're not actually doing any of those things to trans people, that you pretending that it's not that I'm not an ally of trans people. It's like the trans people have moved away from me. Give me a break. Find one Twitter thing saying, I would like to see them slapped, for saying stuff like that. This is violence. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's despicable. And that shit rubs off on Metzger. He should know that. It rubs off on Metzger.
Oh, yeah.
Whether he deserves it or not, it rubs off on it. You're going to participate. You're going to build the show for a guy who's doing it on those terms. That's on you, buddy. That's on you. You can't. That taint is on you now.
You do that segment because you're chasing those Chappelle show clips, and
That's exactly what
and the vehicle was, and to do that was trans people are violent. It's really great.
Largely male audience. They feel uncomfortable with trans people. It's easy. It's an easy way to validate those folks, and they'll come back for that sweet, sweet validation regularly.
Yeah, and like I say, you're going to be a guest on that show, on that segment. For that, you own it. You helped construct it.